Avatar Part 6, The Day the World Drowned. Come, let me tell you a story, because there are some mornings that begin so quietly, so peacefully, and so deceptively normally that if someone had whispered into your ear by sunset, the world as you know it will no longer exist, you would probably have laughed politely, finished your breakfast, and asked whether there was any more mango pickle. And that, my dear listener, was precisely the sort of morning King Manu awoke to on the final day of the age. For although the clouds had gathered throughout the previous week and the wind had developed the strange habit of carrying silence instead of birdsong, there were still children chasing each other through village streets, merchants opening their shops, fishermen inspecting their nets, and one elderly gentleman loudly insisting that the weather had been considerably worse when he was younger. A statement which I should point out elderly gentlemen have been making since the invention of weather itself. The great boat stood ready. Its mighty wooden hull rested upon the earth like a sleeping mountain, filled now with everything that could possibly be saved, and perhaps a few things that somebody's grandmother had insisted were absolutely essential, despite nobody else understanding why. The seven great sages were aboard. The sacred scrolls had been wrapped carefully, the baskets of seeds had been stored, medicinal herbs filled entire rooms with their fragrance. The animals, well, the animals were mostly behaving. Mostly. One royal attendant rushed across the deck panting so heavily that he looked as though he had personally attempted to outrun the wind. Your Majesty, Manu turned. What is it? We have misplaced two goats. Manu sighed. You cannot misplace goats. Oh, we absolutely can. They were standing beside the oxen. And now, they're standing on the roof. How? We're still investigating. Now, I have spent a great deal of time observing goats throughout my life, and I've reached one unavoidable conclusion. If there exists a surface upon which a goat should not logically be standing, that is precisely where you'll find the goat. And then, the rain began. Not a violent storm, not yet. Just one drop. Large, cold, perfectly round. It landed upon the wooden deck. Another followed, and then another. Soon the entire sky seemed to exhale. Rain fell softly at first, almost politely, as though asking permission to enter. The farmers smiled. Good, one of them said. The crops needed this. Oh, my dear fellow, only if you knew. Within minutes, the gentle rain became a steady curtain. Within an hour, streams overflowed. By evening, rivers no longer remembered where their banks had once been. The water simply kept rising. Villagers carried children upon their shoulders. Cattle hurried towards higher ground. People climbed hills that had never before seemed especially important. But the rain never stopped. Not during the day, not during the night, not the next morning, nor the morning after that. The rivers surrendered first. Then the valleys, then the valleys, then the forest. Trees that had stood proudly for centuries disappeared beneath swirling waters until only their highest branches remained visible like desperate hands reaching towards the heavens. The mountains themselves began losing their foothills. Roads vanished, villages vanished, entire kingdoms vanished. The earth slowly forgot where it ended and the ocean began. From the deck of the great boat, Manu stood in silence, watching the world he had ruled disappear beneath an endless sea. And although he knew this day would come, although Vishnu himself had warned him weeks before, there's a profound difference between hearing that something will happen and standing helplessly as it actually unfolds before your eyes. Because knowledge prepares the mind but rarely prepares the heart. One little deer pressed itself against his leg. A frightened child buried her face in her mother's shawl. Even the lions, those magnificent kings of the forest, had abandoned every trace of pride and lay quietly beside the antelope. Fear, I've noticed, has a curious habit of reminding every creature that survival matters far more than status. And then, without a warning, the boat lurched violently. The waters beneath it had finally become deep enough. The great vessel floated free, and a tremendous cheer erupted across the deck, cried a carpenter who immediately burst into tears. Now that, I think, is perfectly understandable. Imagine spending months building the largest boat in history with absolutely no opportunity whatsoever to test whether the thing actually worked until the apocalypse arrived. That is confidence. Or extraordinary pressure, possibly both. The rain continued. Days passed, perhaps weeks passed, Time itself became strangely meaningless with the sun really appeared and every direction looked exactly the same. Above them, grey skies, below them, grey waters, endless. And ahead, more water. Behind, believe it or not, water. If anyone had suggested taking a leisurely evening walk, the proposal would have been received rather poorly. And then, the ocean changed. It grew strangely calm, not peaceful, expectant. The surface shimmered with golden light. At first, everyone thought the sun had finally broken through the clouds. It had not. The light came from beneath the sea, brighter, closer, closer still. And until suddenly, the ocean exploded, not with destruction, but with majesty. A colossal golden fish burst forth from the depths, so vast that mountains might have mistaken him for one of their own. His scales gleaming like molten sunlight, his eyes filled with immeasurable compassion, and upon his magnificent head rose a single great horn that pierced the mist itself. Lord Vishnu had returned. Now, if anyone aboard had still harbored the faintest suspicion that perhaps Manu had exaggerated his earlier conversation with the fish, those suspicions disappeared rather quickly. The seven sages folded their hands, the animals became strangely still, even the monkeys, which, if you know everything about monkeys, is a miracle almost equal to the flood itself. Vishnu's voice rolled across the endless waters. Manu, my lord, the time has come. Vasuki, the mighty king of serpents, emerged from the waters like a living river of emerald and gold, coiling himself beside the great vessel with remarkable patience, considering he had just been informed that his role in this divine plan involved becoming for a short while at least the world's most important rope. Now, I sometimes wonder how that conversation went. Vasuki, yes lord, I need a rope. I beg your pardon? A very strong rope. And you. There are moments when arguing feels unnecessary. This was almost certainly one of them. With reverence, Manu and the sages fastened the great boat to Vishnu's shining horn using Vasuki, and the instant that final knot was secured, the mighty Matsya began to swim, drawing the vessels across the endless cosmic ocean while the last remnants of the old world disappeared forever beneath the waters. The journey had begun. But hidden far below those dark waters, clutching the stolen Vedas with the arrogance of one who believed he had outwitted both God and destiny, Hayagriva was waiting. He had absolutely no idea that destiny was swimming straight towards him. The flood had been survivable, the boat was safe, life had been preserved, and now only one task remained. The Vedas had to be brought home. And Hayagriva was about to discover that stealing from Brahma was considerably easier than escaping Vishnu.